It is Thursday, February the 18th, 2021, and it is still a little bit damp outside in the Atlanta, Georgia area. But fortunately, they have electricity here, unlike some places like in Dallas and in Texas and College Station, where I know they're doing rotating, where they turn off the electricity for like 2 hours and then turn it on for 20 minutes. And just incredible when you think about what's going on in the state of Texas. There's been people that have lived there their whole lives that have never seen such cold temperatures in the, I don't know, single digits and below zero. So I'm fortunate to be in the Atlanta area where it's, I don't know, in the 40s and 50s. And no freezing rain and no snow. So anyways, I'm excited about next weekend in Port Richey, Florida, which is near Tampa, Florida, coming there to do a weekend ministry, which is what the Lord told me to do a couple weeks ago. He said, start doing these where we do Saturday deliverance trainings, where we can train people so that they can help others get freed, get healed from their wounds, get delivered from the demonic spirits tormenting them. I'm going to do Sunday morning corporate deliverances for the entire church, and then do private sessions for people on Sunday afternoons. So that is what's happening at the DTM Church. Pastor Freddie Santos also excited that decided to go ahead and create a new ministry page on Facebook, since Facebook unceremoniously decided to disable the accounts because apparently I was saying too many nice things about Trump on occasion. So anyway, with no notice, they took off everything, and now I'm starting over. But in starting over, what's pretty cool is learning some functionality that was disabled about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, has now been re-enabled. So we're able to actually function even better than what had done prior. So the efficiencies are going to be increasing, and we've already got hundreds of people that have liked the page, and again, testimonies will be on there shared about their people's lives that have been changed, marriages that have been saved. I continue to get those every week, pretty much every day now. People are messaging, so it's growing. It's amazing. Yeah, I started thinking about this back in January 23rd, 2015. That's when the Lord had me finally separate from a very abusive situation that I didn't want to go through, but the Lord said ultimately it would lead to this ministry helping people all over the world, and it really has. And again, it's a ministry I didn't want, never wanted to be in ministry whatsoever. I think that oftentimes is what the Lord is looking for, is a person with his own heart, with a humble heart, with a loving heart that wants to help people, because they count it, to be able to do anything to be used by the Lord. They count it as an honor. Whereas there's a lot of people that are in ministry that are more prideful, that are more arrogant, that love their titles, and the Lord wants them to humble themselves before the Lord. So anyways, it's amazing to watch the ministry continue to grow, continue to develop. And in all honesty, it's been very hard because it's a deliverance ministry. It's not an easy ministry. Again, if I just prophesied nice words over everyone, people would love that, but there's a dime a dozen, it seems like, with people that are prophetic, giving, great words, which again, the Lord uses prophets. I understand that. But there's sometimes you have to give a challenging word to an individual. If that person is, operating the spirit of Jezebel, where they're controlling, they're manipulating, they're lying, they're trying to dominate another person's life, hurting them, keeping them from their destiny in the Lord. And sometimes you have to give words like that. And I've had to do that, and that's not fun. But if you do it in spirit of love, that's the thing, is if love is lacking from a person who is speaking words over you, and they want to dominate your life and make you do what they want and accuse you of things, and they're very, they're mean-spirited, then oftentimes they'll be nice initially because they know that if you're mean to somebody, they're going to say sayonara. But what will happen is the person will slowly, it's just like when you have like a frog being boiled. It's not, they don't drop a frog into 200 degrees and the frog, what does the frog do? It jumps out and wants to get out of there. But you slowly turn up the heat. That's exactly how people that operate in Jezebel do, is they become your friend, they become loving, kind, sweet to you, but then over time, they will start to want more and more of your time, pull you away from other people that you could spend time with and enjoy, but they're jealous and they want to dominate you. So, so anyways, we're talking about that today, actually, discernment, how to turn up the discernment level to a higher level, because we need that. Again, I would never have been able to discern anything had I not gone through what I've gone through. And then since I have, I've been able to discern a lot more. So anyway, schedule is February 27th, 28th, Port Richey, Florida. And then I will confirm, there's a chance that I'll be coming to Birmingham, Alabama on March the 6th. Also, this just came in. This is cool that the Lord, out of nowhere hadn't expected. I had forgotten, frankly, about this, but I'll remind you, back in August, early August of 2000 and what was that, 2019? Yeah, early August 2019, I went to speak at Cooters in Luray, Virginia. Cooters, if you remember the Dukes of Hazzard, there was a mechanic there named Cooter, and he's a real life person. He actually was he served, I think it was in Georgia, actually, that he was like a congressman, I believe. I believe that's true. So anyway, I got to meet him. He has a garage there that's open to the public. Lots of people flock there. They have Dukes of Hazzard reunions like every year, and Bo and Luke and Daisy Duke and others come back for that. So anyway, I got to go there, had a lot of fun, really enjoyed it, and did a corporate deliverance at a church service they had there on Sunday morning. My good friend Lisa, who's leads and hosts singing there, she also hosts the worship and stuff, had invited me to come. So anyway, we've decided to have it set to come back there, which is awesome. Gomer Pyle, no, it wasn't Gomer Pyle. It was, what's the guy's name? Because he was actually in the Dukes. I didn't really watch the show that much. My mom wouldn't let me. But there was a guy named, I think his last name was Pyle, Denver Pyle. I think that's the name of the guy that was in there. The older guy that was the uncle of the Duke boys, I think. I don't know. I'm assuming he's passed on. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but maybe he is. Anyways, so that's on April the 4th, which is Easter Sunday. I remember last year, the Lord had me do an Easter service for the first time. And then I was at a church that was in northwest of LA. And now here I am doing another one on Easter. I also did a Mother's Day service for the first time up in Seattle. So I love doing these holidays. I count that an honor as well. So anyway, if you are near Luray, Virginia, which is about 2 hours from Washington, D.C., it's like west of D.C., come on out Sunday, April the 4th. It's at 10:30 a.m. Put that on your calendar. Also, you can find it on Facebook now. Go out to Restored to Freedom, and you can find the event, and you can actually click on going, which makes it more convenient. We also have links there to Eventbrite. And then June 12th and 13th be in Bernie, California, which is Northern California. I'm going to probably schedule to come out to Needles, California. I was there at Assemblies of God Church a couple years ago. Again, that was in late 2018. Really hot when I was there, because it was like, gosh, what was it? It would have been, I think, early September. And I remember it was like 110 or something. And at nights it was like 102 or something. So I'm assuming June will be nice and hot there in Needles, but I'm going to look to get that scheduled, and some other places in California too. All right, that all being said, again, be in prayer for people that are in Dallas. There's people in Dallas that have not had any electricity since Monday. Can you imagine being that? And they're like boiling water, and they're trying to keep warm with grills and stuff, which is dangerous, obviously. And some people are like burning parts of, I don't know, furniture and things like that to keep warm because they've run out of wood. So it's gonna warm up, I know, this weekend, but it's getting there from, today's Thursday to Saturday, when it's gonna be back in the 50s again. All right, so turn up your discernment to a higher level. So I'll preface this by saying, I remember, I've been to church my whole life since I was a little boy. Grew up with a mom that played piano in the church and played the organ, and then my dad, he would pray in tongues and read the Bible and stuff. He wasn't really a strong spiritual leader by any means. I wished he would have been more, but that's, most guys, if your dad isn't that way, then it's hard to become that way. But I was in church my whole life, prayed in tongues since I was 13. But when it came to learning about discernment, it wasn't really until 2009 when I attended some Morris Cirillo conferences. And I remember Morris had prayed over me that my spiritual eyes would be opened. He also gave me a prophetic word when I was in Jerusalem, Israel, that the Lord would have me be in charge of a worldwide ministry. It would grow really rapidly. It would be very large at the end. And I was like, what? Say what? This is amazing. I didn't have a desire to do that, but now I see that it's coming about, and it's a blessing. It's an honor. I want to help people. I want to help people get healed. I want to help people get delivered. I want them to enjoy their lives. And again, people that struggle with being freed from past soul wounds and not healed, not delivered, they're going to attack people that are doing God's work. They're going to call them their enemies. They're going to lie about them. That's how the enemy works a lot, is through rumors and gossip and lies. And it's par for the course if you are in ministry. I didn't know all that until I got into it. And I was thinking, okay, this is great. Everybody's going to like everybody. Everybody's going to love everybody. I'm like, no, it's not the case at all. There's a lot of people in ministry who are prophetic, that have evil hearts, and they're gossips. And God's like, I'm tired of this. Enough of that. That is wrong. It's evil. And so anyway, the Lord's dealing with people today at all levels, in leadership positions. And again, my calling is to help people to get healed from their past wounds, to get rid of the demons that are tormenting them, and to have a heart of Christ, have the fruit of the Spirit, love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and gentleness, goodness, self-control, faithfulness, the fruit of the Spirit. Because there's a lot of people that are in ministry in church, and a lot of people attend church that don't have any fruit of the Spirit. They have the fruit of judgmentalism and criticalness and control and manipulation and fleshly stuff, and that's not good. So anyways, so the preface that I have is that what I've learned along the way is that there are things that you can look like you think, like you look, say, for a person. You may see the person at church and how they react, and they act all sweet and nice, but you don't know how they are behind closed doors. And you may see people that you would judge and think that, oh my gosh, they're so good, they're so loving, they're so sweet, they're so giving. But yet in reality, they treat other individuals with very much control and harshness, judgmentalness. And so the people that are in relationship with them are like, well, you don't know the person that I know, because they'll target individuals, and so they may treat other people at church nice, but then they have one person or two people. They might have a relationship where they're married to them, they have a relationship where they're mentoring them, and they're controlling and they're manipulative and they're accusatory and they're crazy and they're demonic, they're evil, they're not loving, but you don't discern that because you don't spend maybe as much time with them or behind closed doors, so you don't see that. So all you perceive on a person or an individual or even a ministry or a church is that, oh, they're all great, they're all loving, they're all kind. When in reality, it could be completely farther from the truth. So anyway, I get calls and emails every week, from pastors, pastors' wives, other church people who would call themselves Christians, asking me to help them because their wife, their husband, people in the church that are leaders have emotionally abused them, oftentimes for years and worse, and they just cannot take it anymore. So it's hard to know who is legitimately a godly man or woman and who is involved in more sin than ever because of how good people are at acting and acting nice. It's called being a fake Christian, and there are millions around the world who attend church regularly who would be considered fakes. And again, they may be in process. It may be that they just still have not gotten their wounds healed yet. They have not gotten delivered yet. So when that all happens, then that's a good thing. And but sometimes it may take a person years, a lifetime to get to that point. And the Lord knows how long it's going to take. So the enemy knows his time is getting shorter and has been infiltrating God's church for many, many years. Satan is gearing up for the final war against God's remnant and his bride. And there is a difference between God's bride and the church. Many would call themselves Christians, but few are actually his bride and remnant who are consecrated to him, pursuing a life of righteousness, holiness. And so it's interesting. I went to Greenville, South Carolina, and that there was an individual that was there who later on Facebook had talked about how it's like most places, most people at church think that, okay, as soon as I ask Jesus into my heart, I'm saved, I'm good to go, and now it's just a matter of like learning more about the Bible and starting to serve. And so we see a lot of churches that they start to do that. They start to develop these discipleship courses and plans and stuff, but they forget about the most important part once a person makes a commitment to Christ, and that is getting their past soul wounds healed and then getting delivered from the demons that would torment their minds. So the enemy is after our soul. The Lord is after our soul. Our soul is comprised of our mind, our will, and our emotions. Our mind are the thoughts. So the demons have control over a lot of the thoughts that Christians have. So they get a lot of these thoughts that are not godly, that are judgmental, that are prideful, that are arrogant, and it puffs them up and it causes them to believe that everything that they hear is from the Lord, when a lot of what they're hearing is from demons. And so it causes them to want to control and manipulate and make people do what they want, instead of being, godly and loving and hearing the Lord and trying to help a person through their life and truly putting them before themselves. There's a lot of people that want to dominate and make a person do what they want. So anyways, the enemy knows his time is getting shorter and has been infiltrating God's church for many, many years. Satan is gearing up for the final war against God's remnant and his bride. There is a difference between God's bride and the church. Many would call themselves Christians, but few are actually his bride. So most in the church are still operating out of their soul wounds, which allow demons to torment their mind with thoughts, addictions, behaviors that would cause them to sin and pursue their fleshly desires. People must get their soul wounds healed from their past, and they have to do that through pursuing deliverance from operating in the enemy's ways, so that they can walk in the Spirit with fruit of the Spirit. Again, fruit of the Spirit would be love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So discernment is when you know that something or someone is either good or bad, godly or demonic, honest or a liar, without having the source disclose that to you. And so that's something that in the last several years, I've noticed that is, I remember one person, she said that she had a dream about me doing ministry with her. She was already a person that did ministry, had a large presence on Facebook with one of her groups. And so she interviewed me twice. And both times she had a lot of anger, a lot of like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to expose these people. And I'm like, really? I'm like, that's not the Lord's heart. Heart of the Lord is these people that are doing these things that are not good, not godly. God doesn't want to expose. He wants to love them and to bring maybe to their attention some things that need to be healed and pointed out. But this person was just very much angry and vitriol. So anyway, she told me about another individual that had a competitive ministry to hers. And she said, oh my gosh, that person's a Jezebel. Yep, she's a Jezebel. She's a Jezebel. So when I first heard it, I took it for being the truth. Oh, okay, well, good to know. But I'm always leery when a person voluntarily speaks something about another person. I'm always leery because I'm like, you know what? What business of that is mine? What business is that of yours? Why would you say that? Well, that normally is pointing out something, a defect in their own character, or they want to know information. They want to, oftentimes, let's pray for this person. And then they reveal, they start to gossip about another person. So that can help trigger your discernment to saying, okay, if a person is saying things about another person, why are they doing that? Shouldn't they go to that person? And shouldn't they have a discussion? And if the person doesn't want to listen, then they give them to God. You don't go out there and start gossiping about other people. I don't do that. That would be wrong. Especially people that do these things on Facebook or social media, that would name names and things like that. God's normally not in that whatsoever. So anyway, it started to show me discernment-wise that individual, when she was saying that, it turned out later I was proved out that person was not a Jezebel, that she was. So oftentimes people that accuse you or accuse other people of being a certain way, oftentimes they are that way. So it started to show me, and I started to have more discernment that, okay, I'm learning about the people that would come forward with information. Again, you have to really know a person to completely trust that person. And if they're out there gossiping and saying things about other people, then that can show you, and you can discern a lot easier about that person's their own character. So the enemy's goal, of course, is to appear good and godly and to befriend people who are in the church for a time, only to later sabotage them in a way that they oftentimes never saw coming, and that would devastate them or destabilize them. So if they can hurt a person deeply and deep enough, then they will often have, that person will have anger and hatred and bitterness for them that they oftentimes will never recover from. I see that all the time, where a person will come through my ministry, I'm doing some deliverance with them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I was hurt by my father growing up, or my mother growing up, or stepfathers, this person had sex with me, blah, 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 blah. But later in life, when they're in adults and they attend a church, and then the person hurts them, a pastor's wife, a intercessor, a prayer warrior, a prophet, quote unquote, and they say things behind their backs and they hurt them and they lie about them, that oftentimes they get hurt so deeply, they're so angry at that person. And that's what the demons want to do in that person, is to hurt a person, hurt them really badly and deeply, to where they end up getting so angry at the person and bitter that those demons have legal rights then to torment their thoughts and to come against them and hurt them, and or have them turn against God and their own calling that they have in the Lord. So again, oftentimes people that have these demonic spirits, their goal is to latch on and leech on to those who have a calling on their life, and have an anointing on their life, have gone through a lot of extreme stuff, and they oftentimes get into jealousy, and they want to prohibit that person from coming into all that the Lord's called them to be in, and they make, again, they'll try to stab them in the back by talking behind their backs and stuff. And if you're obviously a senior pastor of a church and you see some of this going on, you have one person that tattletales or gossips and stuff, you need to deal with that. Because if you allow that person to continue to say that, you're going to have a lot of poison in your church from that person, and they can come against you, if they're coming against another person. And you got to deal with that. You need to ask the Lord what to do as far as having a conversation. I know they're not easy conversations that you have with people that struggle with Jezebel. They'll take an offense at the drop of a hat. They're very prideful. They love their current positions in the church. They want to work their way up higher and higher so they can control more people. So anyway, the enemy's goal is to appear good and godly, to befriend people who are in the church for a time, only later to sabotage them. And sometimes they may do it years later. They may become your best friend. And that's when it's really painful, when you have given your life and shared details and so forth and been forthright, and then they end up later turning on you. So how does the Lord, well, I'll get into this a little bit later about how do we increase and lift up our discernment. A lot of it is experience. A lot of it is we have to go through some things so that we can see it. Because otherwise, you can read it all day long in a book, but until you live through it and actually walk through it and see it with your own eyes, it takes on a whole nother personality at that point. All of a sudden, it really hits home with you. All right, so if they can hurt a person deep enough, then they will often have such anger and hatred, bitterness for them that they'll never recover. There are many people who are in the church who act like they are godly, when truthfully, they have the most impure or ungodly hearts, motives in their hearts and their minds. Their goal is to make themselves look good and have others look up to them and try to get themselves positioned into churches that are doing things for the Lord. That's why if a church is seeing good fruit, you're going to see people that struggle with Jezebel, people that are witches that will come in and try to work their way up into positions. And so you got to discern, you got to see things. We talked about the Kundalini spirit, I don't know, about a week ago, and how people make these weird sounds and overact and act like they're under the presence of the Lord, and they make it very dramatic to make an impression on everybody else and saying, look how godly that I am, oh my gosh, and then they ooh and ah and just do weird things. Their necks and stuff trigger, and they have like nervous tics, it looks like. I mean, all that stuff's Kundalini spirit. And so you got to discern that. So their goal is to make themselves look good and have others look up to them and appear to be godly, to gain the trust of people and ultimately influence their decisions, and then shut down the true Holy Spirit from flowing if they can, or at least target an individual or a couple of individuals to get them to come under them, and then they can control them. Oftentimes they will target people that have gone through some horrendous experiences, because the demonic in them knows the Lord's hand upon that person who has been hurt and hurt deeply, who is actually being healed from that, is going to come into a full, strong anointing, maybe greater than what they have, and they get jealous of that. So anyway, there's millions of people in the church who have an impure heart and wounds in their soul that have never been healed and are walking around hurting people deeply. If they have never gotten their wounds healed and delivered from their demons, then they receive thoughts from the enemy in their mind, and they will hurt good people. They have a lot of pride. Pride is a big telltale sign. If you can discern pride, it's the Leviathan spirit. Job 41, verse 34 is king over all the children of pride. So it's that prideful spirit in them that wants people to look up to them and be impressed by their titles. They love their titles. They call themselves prophet or prophetess or apostle or bishop or pastor. And then they can control people by utilizing that. They hurt more people when they do ministry over them by lying and controlling them, and then getting them to blame God for everything. Discernment is needed now more than ever before, as the enemy is in so many people who want to appear to look good but aren't. And the enemy has used them to convince people who are actually good to believe that they are bad, so that the other people will not listen to them. You see it in politics a lot, when the media will come up with a false narrative about a good man or woman and then repeat it over and over and over again, trying to convince the public and get others to come against the good person, to hate on them. So just how do you discern who and what is good and who and what is bad? Oftentimes, experience really is the best teacher. Once you get into a relationship with someone who appears to be good, but ultimately later, and again, it could be months later, it could even be years later, will stab you in the back, then you begin to pick up on the signs quicker for the next time around, the next relationship. So it's critical not to ignore the red flags. So what are the red flags? Here are some of the red flags. People will often be able to behave nicely to you, but maybe it's only for a few months. It depends on how often that they see you. Maybe it's for a few years, if you only see them on occasion. But if you watch their actions and their words over a year or longer, you will usually see the real person that's inside that will come out, either good or bad. Next thing is to look at the actions over the words that they say. Are they a man or woman of their word, or do they lie about many things? So oftentimes, people with Jezebel and Leviathan spirits will say things, act like they're really nice, act like they're really sweet, but it's an act. When you actually see their actions and what they do, then you're like, oh my gosh, you're not that person at all. You maybe believe that that's who you were, but you're not that person at all. And oftentimes they can target one individual. They can target just you. And they may treat others really nice. And so if anybody else were to ask about them or think about them, they believe them over you. That's how Jezebel oftentimes works. That's how I saw it work out in mine, is had my wife that treated me horribly over many years. And then finally, when I separated, the Lord told me to separate. Then I went to talk to the leadership of the church, They believed her lies over my truth. And I'm like, what? I'm like, God, that's not supposed to work out that way. And he's like, well, sadly, that's how Jezebel works. And you had to go through this. You had to understand and discern this and see this at a very deep level, because you're going to be working with other people who have been Jezebeled as well. And when you see this in other people, and you understand this in other people, then you will know that. You'll be able to see that. So other things that they have, sorry about that. Quiet over there. Hey. Quiet, dog. Okay. So do they have issues with things like, say, drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, doing drugs? Do they future talk a lot, saying in their near future how many great things are going to happen, yet nothing ever comes through like they said, and then it's been like a year or longer? You know, do they talk? How do they talk? Are they godly in their words, or do they cuss on occasion? I've seen this too, where you get around a person that will say these cuss words, and then they will act all sweet and nice in front of the church, but then maybe just around you, they will say these curse words, or racist remarks, or gossip about a lot of people. You know, do they behave weird or strangely? You know, and they can't be normal. You know, does their prayer language sound demonic? Do they have nervous tics? You know, do they worship? So they worship for others and they act like they're so godly when they're not. Are they anxious a lot around you? Do they not have peace in their life? You know, demons cause people to never ever have peace. So are they all talk and no action? You know, pride usually shows itself, and they can try to portray themselves to be godly, but if all they ever do is talk a good game, but yet never take action, then you know that they're not the real deal. So you can verify what they say is the truth. You know, if they say that they graduated from a certain college or Bible school, then they should be able to prove that. Oftentimes people talk about that, or they put it on social media as their credentials when it's not true whatsoever. You know, if they say that they're a pastor, then ask them where they went to Bible school at, to see if it's real, or if they did an online school and have never pastored anyone. You know, vet what people say as truth is actually true. Do some homework if you need to do in order to have them prove what they are saying. If they get upset at you for making them prove the truth, then they are probably hiding something. If they get defensive and try to blame you for their negative faults, then you can guess they are not an honest person. So God is cleaning up his church because there are so many people who are lying about who they really are and are hurting other people in the process. God is exposing people who are deceivers, and although it is not a fun process, it's a very necessary one. Many who are leaders in the church are being humbled as the truth comes out about them, as they are losing their positions. Then God is promoting people with his heart into the positions of leadership. You know, there are many people in the world who the media had convinced that President Trump was actually bad or evil, when in reality, the reasons why the Democrats and the media would, and even getting people in the church to hate him, was because he was taking action that was right. It was good. And they were in the process of bringing that out to light so they could actually show some of those that were really doing evil and not doing justice. So God is holding people accountable to a high standard of truth. You know, Trump had stood up for the unborn, against abortion. He took stands against sex trafficking, pedophilia. He wanted to protect the people from the illegal aliens that were coming across the border in the United States. And it's easier to discern when you look at the actions that a person takes. If they're doing what is more aligned with God, then they are acting like that or saying like that. So never before is it more imperative that people must have a higher level of discernment to truly see what is good and what is bad. Obviously, you know, if you've not gotten your soul wounds healed, not gotten delivered, then your demons that have legal right to torment you will convince you that other people who are doing evil things are good, and you will think good and godly people are bad. So I know personally of one woman who calls herself an apostle, who actually does witchcraft and curses people, yet has thousands of people on Facebook who continue to think she is some type of a godly woman, and they actually support her, and she has an online school of ministry that people pay for. But actually what she does is, if you don't do what she wants, she will curse you, and you will end up getting, piercing stuff in your eyes, or sciatic pain, or feeling sick and nauseous. She can astral project, and she's very, very evil. But you have to have discernment to see that. There's a lot of people that don't. Until I went through that in my own personal life, I didn't know. I didn't even watch her stuff. I didn't, had no desire to look at it. And then when I actually started watching it, I'm like, you can see in the person's eyes, oftentimes the eyes are the windows to the person's soul. And you can see in her eyes that she looks very weird. There's something that's not quite there. There's an emptiness. There's like a zombie-like look in the person's eyes. They really can't hide if you have the spiritual, blindness removed from your eyes so that you can see. So oftentimes you have to follow a person for months, and even then you may not discern it, because if you're not close enough to the situation, to the person, you're not going to see it. I saw it firsthand at a ministry day that she had done once in New Orleans, and she was literally pushing people backwards, trying to make them get slain in the spirit. She was pushing them backwards, and I'm like, what? Like, that's not godly. I don't ever do that. That's cheating. That's not good. So there's a lot of things that discernment-wise, that we always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to think people could be possibly hurting people or doing bad things, controlling people, manipulating people. And when they are, we can't look the other way and just say, okay, I'm going to continue to follow them. No, the Lord's going to show you some things, reveal some things to you, so that you no longer do follow them. Because it's important. Same thing with the church, is if you are attending a church and they are teaching you that, oh, Christians can't have demons. Nope, can't have that. And you're like, really? Well, I believe they can. and they do, and very few don't. It was interesting, I'll say this. So yesterday, I went to the dentist, and the dental hygienist that was working on my teeth asked me, of course, what do you do? And so I told her, well, I used to work in business. I used to work for a internet banking company, and a compliance banking company, the two largest in the United States. I managed relationships for them. And I said, but I went through some things in life, and now I'm in ministry. And she was very interested. And she told me that she was a Southern Baptist. So my discernment is, okay, well, if you're talking to the average Southern Baptist, you probably don't want to say that Christians have demons, because they might not believe that. So you have to slowly play that out. So as I'm there in the dentist chair, and she's starting to clean my teeth and so forth, again, you have only a few seconds before that you can't talk anymore. So I started telling her that, well, I've experienced some things with people where they, went to church and they acted sweet and nice, but then behind closed doors, they were very controlling and manipulative and prideful and arrogant. She started shaking her head up and down like, oh, yes, I know that. I've seen that. And then I talked to her about my son, and I said, I had a son that, some things happened to him when he was younger. For 10 years, I dealt with just a behavior that was not who he was prior to when something happened to him that was really bad. So I said, for 10 years. And I said, then I had a guy from California that taught me some things about praying a little differently and taking authority like Jesus did. And I said, I commanded the enemy, called him the enemy, didn't say demon, said commanded the enemy to be gone from him. And I said, overnight he changed. I said, you want to see his picture? And she said, yeah. So then I showed her the picture before and after. And she's like, oh my gosh. She goes, so you kind of did like an exorcism, is what she called it. So I'm thinking, now we're getting a little more where I can talk about demons. And I said, yeah. I go, but I did it in a really calm, business-like way, because I'm not weird. I go, I've noticed there's a lot of weirdness that are out there in individuals. And I said, I'm pretty sure Jesus wasn't weird. He was normal. He did some things that surprised some people, but he said, he wasn't weird himself. And so I said, that's what I do. I have a ministry now. And she's like, oh, are you on YouTube? And I was like, yeah. She goes, I love watching YouTube. I learn a lot from people, from ministry people on YouTube. And she talked about Stephen Furtick. She likes Stephen Furtick. And so I'm like, yeah, he's out of Charlotte. I go, I was in Charlotte not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, did ministry there. And so anyway, she's like, I'm going to check you out. And I'm like, yeah. And I gave her some other pictures before and after, these testimonies from people. And so at that point, the discerning that I was discerning, but she was accepting this and she believed it. And so you can't do that with everybody. And she asked me what my background was growing up. I said I was in Church of God, then I was in Presbyterian, then I was in Assembly of God, and then non-denominational. So I said I've spoken in different churches and hotels and homes. And so anyway, by the end of it, she's like, I'm going to look you up. I'm going to watch this. And I'm like, yeah. I said, and I just explained to her about majority of people are in relationships where one person is more controlling, manipulative, dominant, wants their way, wants to run the show, and they're married to someone that's more gentle, loving, wants to just get along. And I said, there was two people back in the Bible, First Kings and Second Kings. Do you remember King Ahab and Jezebel? And she's like, yeah, I remember them. I'm like, yeah. I said, Ahab had all the authority, but Jezebel took it over. And then she killed the prophets. She did bad things. And then Ahab looked the other way because he got a benefit from it. I said, there's a lot of relationships out there. And she's just like, oh my gosh, this is so true. This is so true. And I told her that, how you get people freed from all this, quote unquote, delivered, is through forgiveness and repentance for pride and sin. And she's like, well, that so makes sense. Yes. And so anyway, that's how an example of discernment, is you go there to the level that you can discern that the person can receive. And if they can't receive, like I had people in relationships with back in Indianapolis, personal relationships where we could just talk about sports. Occasionally I could put in there a little bit about the Lord, but most of the time with certain individuals, it's like you can only talk about sports. If you talk about the Bible, well, they knew it all. They were very prideful and thought they knew everything, and they didn't. And there's a lot of people that are like that. So we have to pray for an increased level of discernment now, because there's going to be a lot of people falling away and following people who are not, unfortunately, of the Lord. And it's hard to discern. It just really, really is. So, all right. So let's see. Revelation 2:18-23 talks about the corrupt church. Corrupt church. And again, I'll say this is, I'm the last person I thought would ever do ministry because I had no desires for it. I was very happy making a very high income doing business for the largest internet banking software company in the United States and also the largest compliance company in the United States. The reason I'm doing this is because I went through stuff. I suffered where I had people in my relationships that were controlling, manipulative, and awful. And I need to go through deliverance myself, which I did. The Lord delivered me of all the wounds and stuff that I went through back my whole life. And that was back in September of 2008. Just woke up and I felt different. And so, but anyway, I had to go through some stuff where other people were not delivered. And then out of that's what birthed this ministry. Not because I wanted to do any type of ministry whatsoever. And it'd be much easier to just say goodbye and go back to selling software and doing that. But now I know too much. I know too much about things, the discernment level the Lord has allowed me to be exposed to. And again, a lot of this, how to have a discernment, is to look upon the actions of a person, not their words, because they oftentimes flatter you, oftentimes say nice things about you, and you think they have your back, when in reality they don't. And I've seen it since I've had the ministry since 2015 now, where I've seen people that came into the ministry, they really liked what I did, they got some freedom, and then they betrayed and stabbed me in the back, and then I had to say goodbye to them. And then like a year later they come back, oh, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, you were right, I did bad things and I wasn't healed yet. I'm like, okay, as long as you be nice, and so you have discernment on experience. A lot of it is on an individual person. There's a thing in banking, we called it the know your customer policy, where you really wanted to know, have a personal relationship with your customer. That's what we're really doing in life, is do we truly know the person that we're looking to get married to? You know, in most cases, people first time getting married, no, they don't. You know, the person will put their best foot forward. Both people will. And then once you get married, then like, okay, I'm going to be selfish now. I'm going to control you. If you don't do what I want, I'm going to get mad, throw a temper tantrum, I'm going to lie. There's a lot of marriages that are like that. And then people are like, what? Wait a minute. Why did you treat me like this after we said I do? And then the same thing, when you get remarried, you're looking for, oh my gosh, I was so hurt, so wounded. And there's people that have Jezebel that did all the wounding, the majority of it, controlling people, hurting them. Then they turn around and get married to somebody else, and they expect them to do what they want. You know, we can get along as long as you do everything that I want. So it is so true. And so that's why we're speaking about this, because there's so many people. Every day I get messages now from people thanking me for the doing what I'm doing. You know, like, don't stop. This is amazing. This explains the truth. The church doesn't want to talk about this. And who was it? Again, there's more and more. We talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago. By the way, that's why I didn't do my live yesterday. I went to the dentist. So, but a couple days ago, we talked about how more and more people are talking about inner healing and deliverance, which is a great thing. Yes, that's what we need. And but ultimately, if you are an individual, you are a human being, and you're watching this, which I think you all are. I don't think there's any, I don't know, dogs and cats watching, but there are sometimes dogs barking in the background. But let's say that you are a person, goes to church, and the pastor's speaking. If you know what the pastor's saying is a lie, do you really want that? If the pastor's preaching that, okay, you can't have demons, which is a lie, and they're saying that, oh, no, you're good to go. You asked Jesus into your heart. You can keep on sinning as much as you want. That's fine. Just ask for forgiveness on occasion. But keep giving your tithes. We need your tithes and your money. So what it comes down to is a lot of churches, the preachers are preaching what the customers want to hear. And in return, they're paying money, tithing to the church. So the challenge is, if those people are going to hell, what good is it? Wouldn't you rather have the truth, even though sometimes, oh, it hurts, yep, I need to change this in my life. I need to get deliverance, I need to get healing. I'd rather have the truth, because the truth is what sets us free. And I would think most people would rather have the truth. Yeah, there's sometimes, in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine, I think it was yesterday, and I was like, we're talking about individuals that we knew, and I remember saying, you know, do you think that this person is truly happy? And she was saying, well, I would say, she would say it to our face, to my face, that she's happy. But deep down in her heart, she's not. And I'm like, yeah, that's the truth. I go, so if we can get to that part of the person to ultimately say, are you truly happy? Most people are not truly happy. Most people do not have peace. And it's because they're not healed and delivered yet. So when we can discern where that person's at, then we know what they can handle when we're talking to them, what they can't. And that's a part of spiritual maturation. As you're maturing, you can discern things. And so I remember when I went through, you know, the deliverance happened in September 2008, I started getting mentored in 2009. Well, I started to discern in other people I'm talking to if they could receive what I'm saying. You know, and some of them were like, oh my gosh, I want to hear more about this, because this is the truth. And when I first started getting mentored from my mentor, I'm like, this is amazing. I go, this is true. Most people have demonic spirits that are tormenting them in their minds and in their bodies. In fact, who was it? Yeah, the woman yesterday, the hygienist. She said, do you think that most people who are sick actually have demonic spirits? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I said, majority of them. I said, there's obviously the physical attacks we get from traumas, car accidents, sporting injuries. But I said, most people have been hurt, and then they have anger and bitterness in their hearts, and that allows the demonic spirits of infirmity, to attack them, to give them lots of these simple diseases and sicknesses in their bodies, because they have anger and bitterness. And she's like, yeah, I believe that too. And that is the truth. I mean, that was one of the revelations I got back in 2009 when my mentor taught me this. I'm like, oh my gosh. I go, all this stuff. I go, it's not a mental disease. It's a spiritual thing where they're hearing demons. And I'm like, that's amazing. We need to get this information out there. And so we've seen people in the ministry that have gotten delivered from mental illnesses, suicidal thoughts, and no longer have them. If you have a person that is hurting their child, speaking harshly to them over and over and over, it's going to have an effect. They're going to feel very negative about themselves. It's going to have effect on their present relationships. It could also have an effect on their health. You can only be spoken negatively to for so long before it starts to impact your stomach. You start to have sickness. Oftentimes people feel like they're walking on eggshells around their spouse or their parents because they'll go off on them verbally. You just got to give in, do what they want. You give in to the demons long enough, the demons know they can control you. So there's a lot of people that operate in this spirit of Jezebel that are in the church, that are leaders. And the Lord doesn't like it. He wants them to be healed and delivered. And if they're not going to do it, he gives them time to repent. It says in Revelation 2:18-23, he'll put them on a sickbed. He'll kill their children, which can also be symbolically who they teach. So I'm going to read this. It says, Revelation 2:18-23, and to the angel of the church in Thyatira write, these things says the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and his feet like fine brass. I know your works, love, service, faith, and your patience. And as for your works, the last are more than the first. So they're doing more works to make themselves appear to be good. There's a lot of people in the church that do a lot of works. They would appear to be good, but then deep in their hearts, they have intents that are evil. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you because you allow that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit sexual immorality and to eat things sacrificed to idols. And I gave her time to repent of her sexual immorality, and she did not repent. Indeed, I will cast her into a sickbed, and those who commit adultery with her into great tribulation, unless they repent of their deeds. I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he who searches the minds and hearts. So he searches the minds and hearts. He searches the minds and hearts. Now, do you have a good mind? Do you have good thoughts coming to your mind? If you're hearing a lot of demonic stuff all day long, you're not going to have a good heart, because the thoughts, what you're thinking, are going to get into your heart. And if you have an evil heart intentions, then you'll have evil thoughts, demonic thoughts, and then you'll have actions that will be bad. You'll be in the church and you'll be wanting to control people, manipulate people, hurt people, dominate their lives, get them to feel miserable about their lives. It says, and I will give to each one of you according to your works. So ultimately, we all need to pray for a higher level of discernment, as much as we can receive, so that we don't have to be burned by false apostles, false pastors, false prophets, people, friends, spouses. Keep in mind that everyone who is intent on hurting you has been hurt in their own souls from their past, and they have not been healed yet. So they'll go off on you, or they'll act sweet and nice for a period of time, but then little by little by little, they want to control and dominate your life. Some of them will eventually choose to get their soul wounds healed. Yay! And delivered from their demons. Yay! That's a good thing. Yay! Yay, yay, yay. While others will refuse and continue to walk in pride and hurt more people. Again, pride is one of the biggest blockers from people getting delivered, is their pride. I mean, I can just see it in so many people. They're so prideful, so arrogant. Oh yes, I'm this title, I'm that title. Oh yes, I have this, and I am so much more superior to you. My life is so much more godly than you are. And they talk down to you condescendingly. That's Pharisees, that's scribes. Jesus hated that. He had righteous anger. He wanted to get away from them. He did not want to hang out with the Pharisees and the scribes. So if you're hanging out with a lot of people at church who are Pharisaical, who are prideful and arrogant, do yourself a favor and part from them. Stay away. Jesus came for division, not for unity. Those that chose to live a Christ-like life could not hang out with on a consistent basis those who were not Christ-like. He said father against son, he came for. Son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law. And you can say the same thing applies for husband and wives. If one person chooses Christ and the other person refuses, then the person that refuses, their goal is to stop you from doing things that God's called you to do. And then we see that. We see it a lot. So let's just, it's our job to discern who can be trusted and who cannot, and then stay away from those who cannot be trusted. I'll say this too, is there's people that you would think appear to be godly, and you may encourage people, oh yeah, that person, they're good, they're solid, but they may have targeted other individuals that you don't even know about. And they have hurt them deeply by trying to control, manipulate every aspect of their life, trying to get them to the point where they basically serve them. And that's not Christ. But if you don't know that about them, then you are going to be fooled about them. And that's the goal of Jezebel, is to act sweet and nice, godly. All these things are an act. The Lord knows the hearts of the individuals. That's what really makes the biggest difference, is the Lord's looking upon the heart and the mind. You know, look at David. Did David mess up? Sure. But he had the Lord's heart. So he knew when he did make a mistake. You know, he apologized, repented for that. And he had some consequences to deal with, yeah. But he was a man after God's own heart. So there's people that are in ministry that don't have God's heart, that shouldn't even be there. Not until they get healed and delivered. Then the Lord can use them. But they try to put the cart before the horse because their pride tells them, you need to get in good with that person, with that pastor, with that senior leader. You need to, whatever, say nice things to them. Give them prophetic words that sound really good. Bake them some food. You know, get in good so that they can protect and cover you. And then that way, when they start to control another person, the person that's above them in leadership will believe the person that has Jezebel over the person that's being Jezebeled. And we see that a lot. We see that, you know, there's pastors that have gone through being attacked. So, inner healing and deliverance. It's not that complicated. You get wounded from your past, you get hurt when you were a little girl, little boy growing up, and you keep hearing over and over demonic thoughts that sound like your own thoughts, but they cause you to trigger and get mad and get angry if you don't get your way and have pride. And you've got to be honest with this. So that's the challenge, is being honest with your own behaviors. And then, you know, if you can't forgive a person for hurting you, you ask Jesus, show me. Why were they so bad to me? Why did my father, why did my mother do all these bad things, or stepfather? And then if you can see them from the Lord's perspective, well, they were hurt when they were little girls, little boys. You know, they were sexually molested. They were yelled at by their dad a lot. They were verbally abused. They were physically abused, sexually abused. Then you can forgive them. And when you forgive them, then you're freed from the legal rights the demons have to torment your thoughts. Then you can take authority that Christ gave us when he died on the cross and command the demons to go. And as you keep getting your wounds healed, you aren't going to trigger anymore. You'll be a calm, peaceful person. You'll be happy most of the time. You can then take the thoughts captive that torment you. Then you can discern in other people. Are they good? Are they bad? Do they have a good heart? Do they have a bad heart? You know, instead of listening to what other people lied about that person. Some of the people that are the most godliest people have been lied about the most by the demons in those people to try to turn other people away from them. You know, and the people that are around those people that maybe have had the Jezebels tarnish them, poison them, the people that have been around them personally have said, you know what, I don't feel that about this person. The person's actually seems really good, you know. And again, only time will tell over time. So, alrighty. So again, next weekend we'll be down in Port Richey, Florida, February 27th, 28th. DTM Church. You can find the details on the website, restoredtofreedom.com, or at Facebook at the Restored to Freedom page, or on Eventbrite. And then I may be coming March 6th to Birmingham, Alabama. Stay tuned on that. Hopefully know in the next week. And then April 4th, coming to Cooter's place in Luray, Virginia. Cooter's, remember the Dukes of Hazzard? I got to meet him, Cooter. Never really watched the show, but my mom wouldn't let me. So anyways, April 4th, Luray, Virginia. I've been there before and excited to come back. That's on Easter Sunday, 10:30. And then June 12th and 13th, be out in California, in Bernie, California. And I'll probably schedule, of course, a lot more between now and then. So, all righty, I will let you guys go. Thanks for tuning in, and be blessed. Have a great rest of your day. See ya. Bye.